scales are, are part of what the anatomy of music is. As far as physically getting around the instrument, I've played scales. It's not like I'm thinking I'm trying to play scales, but as far as helping you to get around the instrument, let me pick up my other axe just a sec. Now this is a 6-string bass, but I also have 4-string instruments. This is just a fancy thing. This is a 6-string bass. Basically the 4 center strings are what every other bass is. There's a top C and a low B, and sometimes I play them, very rarely though. The bottom string I'll play once in a while when I'm playing low stuff, and the top one I use sometimes instead of having to move across. But to answer your question about how I get around the bass, my idea for approaching the instrument is economy in motion. So whatever I'm doing, I'm trying to do with the least amount of exertion, with lack of tension. I think it's important for every musician to approach their instrument being relaxed. I start with, my first lesson with every student, I'll sit down and I'll just play some scales, and I'll have them feel my hand, feel the muscles, because I strive to play as limp as I can. Not that I don't have any control, because it is about control, but I'm not trying to squeeze it like a basketball, like a baseball bat or anything. So, and I try to use as least amount of motion, like my fingers aren't trying to fly out. I'm just trying to economize everything so that when I'm moving around, it's not because I want to move around, but that's where the notes are. And there's a technique that I use to teach all of that, but it's all basically, I try to get my hands to be kind of like a machine. Like I kind of make an analogy of like a racing engine or something. You have, in an engine, you trying to keep the valves with just as much play as it needs to run efficiently. So that's the same kind of thing. I want my hands to be able to operate that way so that I can focus more on what I'm trying to play. I don't really think about where I'm going when I'm doing it, unless something I'm new with or whatever. But you want to get to the point where you're not thinking about it, where it's unconscious, so that your hands, your machine is a slave to your internal musician.
Wow, that's a great question. What do we get from each other when we're playing our instruments? And I get a lot, and you get more. The more you listen, and the more that you really key into your partner, the more that you're gonna get out of it. And I think that I'm listening to, I think the first thing I think of is, where is Steve playing in the time? Like, where's he playing on the beat? Is he playing on top, middle, behind, like I was telling you at the beginning? And then I listen to the specific groove that he's playing, and I try to feel out his interpretation of the groove, like the song go, or the swing, or the rock groove, or whatever it is. And then I just really, I try to communicate with him and really work with him to find the common ground. So I definitely am listening, and it's funny because you would think, right, the drums, because they're the louder instrument, or they're the more bombastic instrument, they're going to be front and center, and the drummer's always going to dictate the time. But the good drummers really are a part of the band, and they're listening to everybody, and in particular the bass player. I mean, does that answer your question? Does that help? Okay. Anything you want to add, Steve?
Well, I've always feel like it's not my position to be dictating what the feel per se is going to be. The song itself, whether it's like a Hawaiian tune or a rock tune or a swing tune, however the performer, say if it's a singer, how they're interpreting it. My job is to support them first and foremost. I need to be able to, of course, lay down what is the fundamental element of the song first, before I do anything else. But there may be certain things. I'm not trying to add anything. First, I look at it like, don't do no harm. Do your job first. I kind of feel like I'm a coal miner. Like, I'm not out there to be a flashy guy. I mean, that's usually like the sax player or the guitar player. They get all, get out there and get all the flashy stuff, But I definitely am listening to. We all got to listen to each other, and the best bands are when everybody's listening to everybody. A lot of times though, it really comes down to where the rhythm section is playing, and it's not just the drums and the bass, because you can have a drum and bass player be together, and if the piano player is just like running off ahead or just not locking in, then it's not good music. It just doesn't feel good. So it requires everybody to do it, not just he and I. And sometimes you work with people that listen to each other, and that's a beautiful thing. Sometimes you're working with people that they're not listening very well. So, what do? Well, try to do what you can to make them sound the best. If it's their gig and they're the piano player, when they're moving their time all over the place, well, I know. I mean, I kind of feel like, well, we got to have steady time. But you know what? It's his gig, and he's playing piano. I'll try to do the best that I can. Sometimes I've played with piano players, for example, that there's no drums there, and he'd be playing piano and singing. So the time would have a real sense of floating around. So I've got to listen to his voice. I've got to listen to what he's playing too. Sometimes the two of them won't jive. So I've got to be as judicious as I can to try and interpret what he's given me to support him. It's not my job to tell him where to feel it, because he hired me to support him. So in that case, it's just like, you're the boss. I'll do the best I can, whether it's floating with you, and because a lot of music isn't involved in metronomic time. Like, for instance, a symphony orchestra or a solo performer singing. I mean, the beauty is a lot of it is in that element of suspension, of things being, what we call rubato, out of time. There's a real beauty in that too. So sometimes you've got to be able to play like that, to be able to make that happen. I mean, if that's what they want, that's what you got to give them, And if I kind of make like, no man, you're Rush, you're all over the place. Here it is. That's the last time I'm gonna get his gig. So I mean,